Welcome to another episode of What's Working in E-Commerce. I'm very excited to have my guest on today. His name is Shane Cicero. He's a good friend here in Madison, Wisconsin. He's over at Foxwell Digital, and he's got his own place, JW Media. Welcome.
Hey, Egan, how are you doing?
Good. So well. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. We are mutual friends of the great Andrew Foxwell. We're big fans of e-commerce influence and all his trainings and everything he does. So really excited to talk to you as a colleague and a friend who's worked with him for so long. Tell us a little bit about what you do and kind of what that partnership has been like.
I'm just the secret weapon. I'm the man behind the curtain. No, I'm kidding. Andrew is absolutely fantastic. I've been working within Foxwell Digital for about the last, we always tease that it's been 6 years, but we're actually past 6 years now. And so anyways, I've worked within Foxwell Digital learning and doing production, Facebook, Instagram advertising. But as a whole, Foxwell Digital actually is a little boutique agency that helps advise on about, I'd say, 50 to 100 million in ad spend annually between agency partners and clients and brands that we audit and help advise on. And so really our big thing has become more about being an advisor and educators for the Facebook and Instagram advertising platform and helping ad buyers perform at their best on the platform for their clients so they can hopefully keep their clients longer and continue to grow their businesses as well. And then, yes, as you said, I do have a little side shop, if you will, where I do run a few smaller scale clients and then also do podcast production as well. Thus, the room, if you will, whatever.
It's excellent. Yeah, I was intimidated producing this with you because I know you're an expert podcast producer. You produce the E-commerce Influence podcast and others. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so I actually come from a background of radio broadcasting. So, it was always my dream just to have my own radio studio. And so as I've grown up now, I guess I have it, if you want to be quite honest and transparent there. But yes, I do have been kind of the silent person on the E-commerce Influence podcast over the last, I want to say 3, maybe even 4 years. I've been producing that. I know I've produced over 100 episodes for them, and so I guess that's about 2 or 3 years now. So, yeah, it's good. It's fun. And, obviously between Andrew and Austin and obviously the founders that they've regularly had on there, you've been on there, lots of great valuable digital marketing information to be shared there.
Yeah, that's Austin Bronner, and he runs Brand Growth Experts and the Coalition, right?
Yep, correct.
That's awesome. Yeah, we're members of Brand Growth Experts and love it. Love everything Austin does. Love everything that Andrew Foxwell puts out. So really excited to talk to you. It sounds like you've really seen a lot of paid ad spend on Facebook and Instagram. Can you tell us just a little bit about that? Like, how has the game changed?
The digital space is absolutely changing. I think it's safe to say that, I'm sure many of your people in your audience, are probably pretty aware. They're looking for kind of tips and tricks on way they can kind of continue to help support their customers or be able to do this themselves. And, so I'm sure everybody's aware that Apple has pushed through more privacy for their users. And, thus they've rolled out with their iOS 14.5 update, what they call their I want to say AT&T. It's not AT&T, but it is the ATT prompt, which is more transparency, or it's app tracking transparency, which limits, if people opt out from apps tracking them, it limits the amount of data that apps or digital platforms like Facebook, Snap, TikTok, LinkedIn, and even Google for that matter, are going to be able to pass back to advertisers in reporting, attribution, and then even from the performance of the platform, right? Because they're limited on seeing what those actions are that those users that they once were able to kind of follow through apps and whatnot on their devices from doing.
So it hits not just the reporting, but it's kind of the targeting and the performance as well. If Facebook has less data to work with, it can be harder to find those purchasers, those buyers, those leads through advertising. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I want to say, like, this is a very large industry, and I think if you are struggling on the platform because of the changes, I think it's safe to say things that were previously working for you are not going to be working. I think you should have some confidence that things are not working for everyone. And so you're not alone in this is kind of the first thing that I kind of need to share with your audience, and just let them know, like, look, like if you were getting a 4x running Facebook advertising and now you're a 1.5, that's everybody. And we'll get into a little bit of the reason why here in just a minute, but like, just know there are smarter people within Facebook, within these digital companies that are trying to figure this out and kind of revamp the platform to make it efficient for advertisers while still maintaining privacy for users. And, you know, that's a completely different conversation, but just know that changes are going to be pretty existent for, I would say, the next 12 to 18 months, easily. So in that, yes, lots of changes, and because of these changes, right, not being able to see or not being able to have all of the data points that Facebook once had on a user to be able to get advertising in front of them is sort of the biggest piece that's been affected. And then that also rolls into advertising, right? Attribution, because you're now not able to share what actions those people who've opted out have done, even though they're still doing the very things that you want them to do, right? Make purchases on your website, come through as a lead. Because they've told Facebook that they don't want to be tracked on their mobile device and those actions happened on their mobile device, now Facebook is only able to attribute one of those pieces of data or whatever that event was that you've prioritized as being the information you want most from your customers.
That pixel event, are you usually setting it to purchase then for an e-commerce client?
If we're talking about prioritized events, Facebook has come out and said that you can have up to 8 events that you want to prioritize, that if someone who's opted out of being tracked, Apple said, we will still send you through a bit of information about them, but we will only do so within 48 hours of that action happening. So they're delaying it. And then Facebook has to kind of source through that, look at what you've decided is the most valuable action that somebody has taken on your website, and then they will attribute that within 72 hours of that action happening. So there's a big delay in how those are happening, and yes, you set the tone for what it is. In most instances for our e-commerce clients, we are prioritizing at this time purchase as the main most important event, followed by add to carts, and then a view content or a lead, or possibly initiate checkout there. We just don't find enough data coming at that. While initiate checkout is the step before purchase, for in a numbers game kind of thing, we're just not seeing a full value of optimizing that higher in that. With your prioritized 8 events, you also have what's called value events or value buckets that make up part of that 8. So if you want purchase data to be passed appropriately from customer actions, you need to have at least the minimum 4 purchase or value events set up. Basically meaning that now when somebody makes a purchase on your site, Facebook has sort of created 4 buckets of the value based on those purchases. So using the example here, let's just say value bucket 1 is purchases that total up to from $1 to $50. If that purchase value, that total purchase value is $45, Facebook is now going to kind of put that in bucket 1. And then when they send that data through to Ads Manager, they're going to actually obscure that data and information. So what might have been a $45 purchase is now going to show up in Ads Manager. Maybe it's $37.50. So it actually now adds another layer. And the reason they do that is to obscure the data and make privacy a little bit stronger, right? So then you can't go and find user who's opted out and identify them based on the purchase information that's on the backside of your Shopify store or e-commerce platform.
So that revenue data gets a little fudged in the Facebook pixel now from your side when you're looking to run these ad campaigns.
Yep. So now as a result of the iOS update, or ATT, we have lack of purchase data being passed, right? Because if somebody's opted out, so now not only, right, so part of this is, right, so we know that we're losing conversion data, right? So we're not getting all of the purchases attributed within the Ads Manager dashboard. Part of that relates to, we used to have a 28-day window. It's now down to a 7-day window where that tracking happens. So we're losing purchase data and information there. We know that purchases are still happening, but then on opt-out users, because we have to obscure that data, their actions are delayed by up to 72 hours on the platform. So we're not seeing those necessarily coming through or those purchase numbers coming through. But then on top of it, their value is bucketed, as I mentioned. And so it's not accurate, right? So what we're seeing in Ads Manager is now a lower number of conversions or a delayed number. We don't know when that action happens. So now it's harder to optimize or scale those ads. And then if we're basing things off of ROAS value or return on ad spend in Ads Manager, that number is not even accurate anymore because it's not showing the true value of the purchase that actually came through on your site. And the variations that they're passing through can actually skew your ROAS data by 20 to 30%, or I would say maybe more like 15 to 20%. To be honest, is what we're kind of seeing so far, because those numbers, while when we've kind of tried to match data from Shopify, the back end of our Shopify clients with real-time purchases in Ads Manager, we've noticed that it's about a 15 to 20% difference, just to kind of throw it off and be like, is that actually the purchase or is it somebody else's purchase? So a lot happening on the platform that is really kind of confused, is really skewing data and then thus making it very difficult for Facebook to optimize and find the people that they need to get in front of to help, get those purchases made. And then just from understanding true performance, we just can't accurately do it by using Ads Manager alone.
Yeah, I come from the SEO world before all this, and so we were used to, Mobilegeddon and all these other updates where Google would make a change and everybody in the industry would scramble. And it sounds like from what you're saying, we got shorter conversion windows, less accurate pixel data, and on from there due to this update from Apple. I'm very curious, how do you and the Foxwell Digital team approach this as consultants who are, helping manage so much ad spend when there's a sea change in the industry and in the platform like this? I'm just kind of curious to hear, how do you approach it? Who are you guys talking to? How do you piece this out when there's such a big change in the main ad platform you're running?
Yeah, so first I have to say, have you seen the meme of the dog sitting at his desk and everything's on fire and he's just smoking a cigarette, this is fine. That's exactly how we're treating everything. This is fine. To be quite honest, I think one of the things that is really valuable about where we kind of sit in this is that, we do have a lot of agency partners. So we've been able to really continue the conversation to kind of understand what they're doing, what we're testing and trying. And, we also have some very wonderful connections with Facebook. We've been in regular contact with our rep and been able to be connected to, some of the engineering team and the data scientists, and then being able to be on some of the webinars and, special kind of communications that they have been putting on for partners and stuff like that. So I think, when you kind of ask about, who we're talking to and what we're kind of trying to learn, I mean, those are kind of the connections that we have and that we're in kind of communication with to make sure we are testing and trying the best things, and then helping our ad partners and other agency partners be able to, continue to test and perform for their clients as well. So when it comes to, so those are the kind of conversations we're having. What we are doing is, I mentioned this to a lot of people pretty regularly. Like, we have been long spoiled on the platform for using and just being able to focus on return on ad spend, right? And that ROAS data. And, clients, e-commerce brands coming to you and saying, if you can get me a 3x ROAS in Facebook, I'm doing good. Life's happy. And that's all they really focused on, right? Moved away from what is my cost per acquisition? What is my, what is my MER on the back end, right? So your marketing efficiency ratio and, or what is it for new customer acquisition? And so what is my cost per click or my CPMs, right? Those numbers have all sort of over the last couple of years faded away because we just sort of, clients primarily as well, have just been like, well, we have ROAS. So like if I know dollars in versus dollars out on the platform, we must be doing good. And so, it's okay if we get we have a $50 CPA because we're still getting a 3X. And so now because of this data, it's like ROAS is inaccurate, as I've explained. And so now, advertisers and brands alike are like, well, what do we do now? And, the unique thing that I have constantly shared is like, Andrew and I have been kind of doing this long enough and in a period of time before ROAS was even a thing, right? We really, he's been doing it since right-hand column Facebook page likes was an ad unit, and that was the only thing that you could do. I came on into this time where, we focused on purchases, but we didn't have ROAS. So it was really about, managing what is cost per acquisition, right? And what is a valuable cost per acquisition? And then what is our CPM? So what is, the cost to get in front of 1,000 people on the platform? And what things can we do to bring that down so we're reaching more people, continuing to drive healthy traffic, and then converting at a, maybe a $25 CPA. Now, that number is not something that we're seeing right now because, again, we do have a loss of purchase data. But I think that is a number that we are actually we've kind of reverted back to using because it is a number that allows us to be able to kind of get a pulse for what's happening on the platform. And we've been working with clients particularly to be able to say, okay, here's what your CPA actually was, say, in Q1 of this year when we had 28-day window tracking and we had full access to data that we no longer have access to. And, looking at that and then looking at the last, month to month data to kind of reset a benchmark and then try and work off of that, right? So what we sort of did, most specifically, we have a client that, they really want to reach, if they can reach a $75 CPA, they then know that with other conversions that are actually being passed on the back end, they're actually more down towards a $45 CPA, which is, a huge win in acquisition for them because their average order value or their average lifetime value of that customer is about $350.
A lot to process there, a lot to really look at. Hey, we got some other metrics we need to look at. ROAS isn't the end all be all anymore, and we can't rely on that. I heard you say MER, marketing efficiency ratio. One question I've had about this is we've been working with clients on this as well is, let's say a client's running Google ads, they're running Facebook ads, right? And now they're trying to figure out what direction are things going. Is this still working? Is this still profitable? If they're doing a blended ROAS or they're looking at a marketing efficiency ratio, which is basically how much are they spending on advertising versus what's Shopify showing in sales, right? How do you consult clients to think about that number? Because maybe in the old world we knew 3x or a 5x ROAS was tremendous. How do you think about MER? Because there's other channels that are bringing sales like SEO, email, direct, referral, affiliate. All these other channels bring traffic to the site and people buy. So I'm trying to wrap my mind around this ratio of ad spend to revenue when that's going to be different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is, right? And it's what it really is about making and helping your client be a better business owner a little bit because, you're right. And especially, with so many businesses being born out of a pandemic, and we saw, Shopify shot up through the roof because everybody started an online store. Some of those still around today. But I think, you're right. It is a bit complicated. I mean, the very simple thing is, look, you're just taking all dollars, out divided by, all dollars in, or all dollars back in divided by all dollars out, right, is giving you that number. Now, you're right. Some of those larger brands have multiple partners, have multiple traffic streams coming in. And so some of that onus comes back to the business owner to help decide, right? I mean, you're there to help navigate them on what is the path to discovering these answers, but ultimately it's what settles their mind and helps them decide what is accurate for their business. And I think as an ad buyer, if someone is trying to plug me or us as Foxwell Digital in, and they have other team players, we can't take all the blame if things, don't, go well. But I also don't expect, if things are going fantastic, that we take all the credit, and so it's about deciding, okay, we know the main traffic driver maybe is Facebook. And we know because we're doing, branded search on Google, and we're doing Google Shopping, that those two pieces maybe equate for 20 to 30% of the pie, because we understand that, or maybe that's only 15%. That's flexibility that, the client has to kind of set and establish and say, we understand this overall number needs to be, somewhere between a 2 and a 4. And, we know just from experience and looking at the volume, looking at UTMs, looking at, the traffic sources, Facebook and Instagram is our largest traffic driver. But we also know that we're in a multi-touch environment where it is about, the email that helps bring people back to the site, because they signed up originally from Facebook, or they forgot the brand specifically. So they, did a search and discovered, or they didn't remember the website fully, but they remember the brand name and, so did a branded search, right? And then came back in and made that purchase. So I agree with you. I think where you're going with this is like, how do we unmuddy it? And unfortunately, I think right now it's just, you're just going to have to play in the mud, I mean, pigs love it. We can love it a little bit, as long as, never mind, I won't go into the dad joke. So I was going to bring in a dirty dad joke and I decided not to. Maybe I'll save it to the end of this.
Stick around, folks.
Yeah, right. I mean, so to me, I know I'm going long on it, but it's about you working with your clients to understand and set that benchmark of what it's going to be if you're using multi-channel. We've been lucky enough that, we still have, some very solid clients that their primary traffic driver is Facebook and Instagram. So it does simplify things a little bit, but it's still continued conversation because they're running Klaviyo or, we're expanding into Snap, testing TikTok in some places. Obviously, I think if you're a growing, e-commerce brand, absolutely you should be owning your branded search on some level as well.
That's great. I think listening to you too, I don't know if this is what you're saying, but something I thought of is you've got your historical data. You can go back and say, what was our MER historically? Like, what is a good marketing efficiency ratio? We knew we were profitable then before the iOS update. Maybe we go based on that if that's a number we want to shoot for.
Absolutely. And I think, one of the things that I also, really noticed is, we were looking at, historical data in one of our client accounts, and 2020, we kind of, right? I mean, let's be honest, everything was wonderful in 2020. World was on fire. E-commerce, everything looked great. If you were an ad buyer in 2020, you were just making gold, so to speak. Looking at historical data and then sort of analyzing and what that would look like without just for example, moving from a 28-day window to a 7-day window, we've actually seen the numbers stay consistent through this period of time where we actually would see Facebook reporting, say a 3x, but then when we look with a 28-day window, but even just switching over to a 7-day within that same time period, the conversion value was almost about half that. And so we've continued to see that. So like using that historical data as sort of re-benchmarking has also been valuable for us because, we're able to say, look, this month in Facebook, it is showing, a 167 ROAS, right? But we know if we looked at a 28-day window, we'd probably be closer to a 3x, and so we know when we're looking on the back end for, full sales that have come in, our MER, and, if we were to attribute all of those sales to ad spend, we tend to still look pretty healthy and close to those, those baseline numbers. I will say there have been some fluctuations just because the platform has gotten a bit more inconsistent is what I would say. It has not been, signals have not been as strong with these changes. So we've definitely seen improved click-through rates, but lower conversion rates, driving solid, cost per clicks. But again, so Facebook's finding the traffic that wants to come through, but maybe not the traffic that wants to purchase right away.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like we're flying a little more blind here. It's foggy out, and we got to do what we can with the dials, right?
That's right. Bring us home, Tower One. Bring us home.
Is there an account you can pull up and talk us through how you're managing it right now?
Well, Egan, let's talk about this. I have got a fantastic account that we can share. I don't want to